there was one guy who actually forgot he had registered. And
Okay.
then it was too late for him to, when he remembered it, it was too late for him to cancel his exam. So he just went and took it.
Oh, and he passed? Hi, Anjlica. Thank you for joining the session. It's awesome to have you here. And it's going to help my subscribers and my YouTube family immensely because there are a lot of questions on cloud security and how they want to get into cloud security.
Yep, I think this is a great idea that you have. And I really appreciate that you or other people like you are taking the time to share knowledge, especially in this age when we have so much new technology that it's hard to get your arms around. It's hard to learn about all these new aspects that new technologies bring. So it's really good if we can, people like you,
Thank you.
Make the effort to share. That's really good.
Yep. Thank you, Anjlica. So could you please introduce yourself to the subscribers and to the viewers, please?
Yep. So thanks for giving me this opportunity because for the last whole year, because of COVID, we didn't have any of our local conferences, meetups. So this is the first online session I'm doing after a long time that is based on knowledge sharing. So I'm really excited to be here. And I'm hoping we can provide more sessions, maybe smaller, focused on one topic to your subscribers. So I am a cloud security architect. I started my career in telecommunications as a verification and implementation engineer. I did a lot of performance testing as well, and then moved into solutions architecture, infrastructure architecture. And I realized that for every project, the functional parts of that project, the use case, always gets all the attention. And the non-functional aspects of that project or that solution never get any attention or don't get enough attention. For example, you have high availability, disaster recovery, security, or a lot of other minor things, or things that might seem minor, but can impact the availability of that application. Those get ignored because the user doesn't see them. So I felt that I kind of found my passion at that time. I felt that I want to work in this area where nobody is putting their effort into it, and the project managers don't direct their attention to it. There's not as much funding for these non-functional requirements.
Right.
And then I was laid off from one company, and then while looking for a job, I realized that in the market now security professionals and managers are realizing that they can teach security, but they cannot teach the application stack to security professionals. And there was this shift in paradigm where we now want to think of security not as a naysayer. We don't want to be the people saying, no, you can't do that, it's not secure, but we want to enable the business. And we want to say, well, that is not secure, but let me help you figure out how to make it secure. So once the security organizations started seeing themselves as business enablers rather than gateways, then the whole recruitment style also changed. And so that's why a lot of people from who did not have any networking background or security background, they basically want to now have a diversity of thought, because when we bring in diversity of our experiences, our problem-solving techniques, we can now apply it more effectively in security. So that's how I got into security.
Okay, so for a normal engineer, like a developer or a person who is working on Linux administration, you know, or even a normal engineer, you know, who writes code, can that person get into security? Or like how can you get into cloud security, or in general, what is the background that they have to prepare to get into cloud security?
I think we need to tell ourselves that I don't have to necessarily learn a lot of new things if I want to get into security. I just want to start thinking with a broader mindset. So for whatever I do, if I'm doing system admin, I should be thinking about hardening.
Right.
That is very relevant, and I can start from there. And if I'm a developer, I can at least think about boundary checking. That's the simplest low-hanging fruit. And I can think about, I should start thinking about not only what my application is supposed to do.
Like penetration testing and all those things that a developer can think about.
Yeah. They can think about what else, how can somebody misuse my application?
Right.
So similarly, in your role, you can start thinking, you can add on to your existing knowledge and start thinking, how can this be misused and how can I protect it? And slowly then you start building layers of whether it's technology you're learning, whether it's a mindset, because security is a combination of a mindset and technical skills. So that's why it's unique in that way and exciting in that way as well. You can never get bored, basically.
Yeah. So first, I think what you're saying is first get the mindset, build that mindset of security first in everything that you do in your day-to-day job. So can a fresher, like for instance, who is out of the college, do you advise them into like get a job as a cloud security or in general any security engineer? Are there really jobs for freshers, do you think?
Yeah, I think that, and I've seen people who, when I was studying for a CISSP certification, there were some people who, let's say they had taken many years off from work because they had kids, or there were people who were in sales for a security company. So I saw people from a lot of different diverse backgrounds.
Right.
And one thing that I did as I was transitioning from telecommunications / IT into cybersecurity was that just to broaden my perspectives, I started attending a lot of meetups locally, going to security conferences. You meet people from different companies, and they each have their own set of problems, their own way of solving problems, and it's enlightening. So for a person who is just graduated from college, I think it's great to start going to local security conferences and start networking. And that's how you can then see which domain of security are you interested in to start with.
Okay. Because usually what happens is like, I get these questions from a lot of my subscribers and viewers as well, because when they come out of the college, as you know, in India, there are lakhs and lakhs of students, right? When compared to US or any other country. So when they come out of the college, it is a huge challenge for them to get into a job at first place. And then usually what I have observed, again, I might be wrong, is especially in the cloud domain, right? Or any cloud technology, they require experience as part of the job requirement. So that's the challenge they have. I mean, so I think it's better for them to first start as a developer. Would you suggest that way and then get into security?
Not necessarily. If they're interested in programming, sure, yes, why not? But let's say, for example, you wanted to get into risk analysis, or you wanted to get into security architecture. Then start reading up on all of the public cloud providers have all of their documentation online. It's free to read. You can get your own personal account for almost nothing. And you can, like when I was studying for AWS certification, AWS certification, I would configure service, but I would never.
So is it AWS architecture or AWS security specialty exam?
I took the AWS architect.
Okay. Solutions architect.
I didn't take the security.
Okay.
So what I would do was that I would configure the services so I could see all of the parameters, what that service, how can that service be misused, or even if you just want to learn about the service, but don't instantiate it, so that way you don't have to pay for it. But you
and also they get first one, I think 12 months free, right? Anyways.
That too, yeah. But reading, that's what I've told a lot of people who then wanted to do the cloud security certification, that every cloud provider has their documentation online. Read about it, get that confidence, and start writing blogs, right, on LinkedIn. And that's how you kind of show your future employers that you are a self-learner,
Right.
and you didn't just do nothing because you didn't have a job. You actually did make good use of your time.
Yeah. So how does your day looks like as a senior, security architect at an enterprise company? How does your typical day looks like?
It's a combination. So like in general, my week, it's a combination of, one is the bread and butter of my work that I have to review applications, and I sit down with the architects and the developers, and I understand their business use case, and also how have they architected the solution, and then I talk to them about the security controls. If there's something missing, then we kind of brainstorm together, and so that's working on that application. Besides that, then I also do a lot of documentation, a lot of reference architectures and design patterns, so that we can keep reusing, and I can even give that to architects and say, this is how we would like you to implement this. And another important part is to keep myself up to date with the new technologies. So I go online, listen to podcasts, security podcasts, and also read about new technologies. So that's a really important part.
Yeah.
As we get busy in our lives, we forget to
Upgrade
learn.
ourselves.
Yeah. So that's another important part, to make sure that I'm always learning, or is there a certification I need to do, I would like to do. So those are a few different parts that keep me busy.
Okay, so how much of, like, in your day-to-day work do you have to write a program or a code or an automation or something in security space? Because you are a very senior person, right? Maybe you don't do it, but usually is there any scope, or does it require that a person has to be a good programmer or developer to become a security architect?
Not for, so it depends your role. Do you want to be an application security architect? Or in my role, I have to sometimes be able to at least read code, and I have to be able to figure out if this code can be compromised.
Right.
But you have to remember that in a security organization, you're never alone. I always tell myself that if there's something I don't know today, I will go and talk to my team member. Sometimes we even reach out to research organizations if we don't know the solution to a problem. So I know I can get help. The main thing is I have to have that problem-solving mindset. So as far as the coding goes, in my role, I don't have to. The application security architect may sometimes have to give snippets of code to the programmer to handle a certain situation in the code itself, to protect it. And then also in some roles, for example, security engineer may need to code automation scripts, or I may need to give requirements.
Like the remediation scripts or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so those can be JSON, Python. It's not like you have to know C++ or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't think people should get intimidated by that fact that they don't know programming. Again, if you are interested, go online, write small, like if I had time, I wanted to do this. I wanted to write skills for Alexa, but it's on my list to do. I haven't done it yet. I wanted to write my own customized skills for Alexa.
So that is out of your interest, Anjlica, or that is something that you would like to know inside out of Alexa to develop your security, more understanding of how Alexa works or those things?
No, it's just for my own personal use.
Okay.
Just just because I'm interested and I want
side gigs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do see a lot of people in security or even network engineering have their side gigs, something going on at their house, something they're building, maybe a Raspberry Pi to do something cool.
Yep.
But if you're thinking about security as a career, I would say I would highly recommend network online or in person, and learn about different security domains, find which one you're interested in, and then read about it. Listen to podcasts. There's so much. There are so many resources online. Make use of them.
So what are the skills that are required to get into cloud security for anybody? Like, what do you recommend for them to start with, or what skills they have to build?
So having worked on applications, the whole ecosystem that was in private data centers only, when I had to learn about the cloud, I read a lot online. I looked at the network diagrams of the cloud providers. What is their recommended architecture or their standard
The
architecture?
WAF, right? Yeah, right.
And well-architected framework now.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say read about it, understand it, visualize it, and understand that cloud is actually making you do things in a very elegant way, as opposed to how we do things or used to do things in the private data centers. So just draw out your own diagrams and get to know how do different components work, how are they deployed, how do they connect to each other, how does authentication work. Just play around with it.
Right. I think talking about the previous question, right, one of the question, Anjlica, there are a lot of tools as well, right, these days for developers for their assistance. Like, they can scan the whole code and they can say these are the vulnerabilities, you might have to fix it here. I think it's becoming more and more easier to integrate their code as part of the DevSecOps and all those things, right?
Yeah, that's true. So you have to play around with those, you have to read about those, and there are so many different meetups, and I don't know how many in India, how common it is to have meetups. There's a meetup for every single thing. So you can have very specialized meetups, or you can join an online community.
Exactly, online,
to do that.
So how different is it from infrastructure security, or rather on-premise security versus cloud security? Like when you used to work as an architect in the on-prem days, right? And now we see like news, some banking accounts got compromised, storing in S3 bucket or whatever. We see all the sorts of news in cloud, right? And it creates a lot of paranoia. Maybe that's because there is now, because of that, there is demand as well. But how is it different, like from
on-premise data center? So I worked in telecommunications a lot. So there were, most of it was dedicated T1 lines, dedicated lines, connections. So there was no, the risk of having someone come through a firewall was very low, because everything was just it's called a walled garden.
Okay.
So it was literally a walled garden, because nobody, unless somebody was tapping on a wire, they couldn't intercept that communication.
Okay.
But now we have a lot more services, a lot more APIs as compared to before, and everything is out open in the internet.
Yep.
And when we go to the cloud, first of all, there is a problem of shadow IT, where any business, any line of business leader can say, here's my credit card, and go ahead, go and do proof of concept testing. So they could take production data and put it in that account. So the ease with which one can get a cloud account and start putting user data in there, or even proprietary information in there, is so much easier.
Right.
That was not there in a private data center. Then the other thing is, it's like when you get a new car that has a lot of features. It has a lot of cool features, whether they're for safety, usability, but you don't know them yet.
Yeah.
And so you might, it might be, you could get into trouble. So the step one is learn about all the features. See what your new car has to offer before you start driving it on the street. Same with the cloud.
Okay.
Don't put your S3 buckets on the internet.
Especially don't make them public.
No database is public. No, and put layers. Always think. Talk to your network engineers. Talk to your security engineers. Always think about defense in depth. It's I use this analogy very very frequently, and I don't know if the application architects laugh at me, or but I use the mudroom analogy, that when we enter our house, we have an area where we take off our muddy shoes, our umbrella and everything. We don't just walk with it into our house.
Right.
So same thing when you are accepting traffic from the internet, you don't know what that traffic is.
Yep.
It's just
Yeah.
arrived from somewhere. It's not just your user sending you that traffic. So build a layer, 1 or 2 layers that sanitize that input, and then you send it into your application layer, your database, just like you would do in your own house.
Right. Okay. So Anjlica, I have read this term called zero trust security policy or something. I've read it in a white paper from Azure documentation or somewhere. So could you please explain what that is and how does it apply for companies?
Yeah, so it's again, how we talked about shifting from the on-premise mindset where you had a firewall on the perimeter and everything inside is supposed to be secure because there's only 1 or 2 different ways to get into your private data center. But as even whether it's private data center or cloud, now as we have so many microservices, we have one application flow split into so many different components that, and of course we have our data flow is split between private data center, this cloud, that cloud, SaaS provider.
Yeah.
It's not just, you're not only in one location anymore, you're spread out.
Right.
So, and then you have all of your, everybody's working from home, and we have so many end devices that have the company data or customer data.
Yep.
So that way of thinking that if I protect the perimeter, that's good enough, doesn't apply anymore, because we have taken one application and split it into so many different layers that we need to start authenticating, checking at each layer. So microservices, if you have so many different components, then we have to start thinking about how is one microservice authenticating to the next microservice.
Right.
Why does my database have to think that, okay, that user has been authenticated somewhere upstream, so I don't need to worry about it. But so that zero trust means that basically you're not thinking that this user got authenticated once and then it doesn't have, that user does not have to be authenticated again in that entire data flow. You want to check at every single point, so that, because any developer can connect to any microservice, right? And start interacting with it. So if you don't have any authentication, then you're basically leaving yourself open for internal threats as well.
Yeah, like if they could hack one microservice, they can pretty much get into any other microservices. Yeah. So basically at each microservice level, what you're suggesting is they have to have their auth layer as part of the service.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So it's zero trust basically is, say that strategy says that have checks done, whether it's authorization check, authentication, do it at every layer. Whether it's additional firewalls, like we have security group rules at every application type instance. So do those kind of checks at every layer. Don't assume that upstream that check has been done, so you don't need to do it anymore.
Okay, thank you. I've learned something new. I mean, it's awesome about that. I mean, I was actually planning to prepare and learn about it, but so Anjlica, let's say I'm working in a company and I want to get into cloud security. I'm working as any profession, right? Like database engineer or network engineer, but I want to get into cloud security out of interest, and I have that mindset. So what are the certifications that you would recommend for them to start with?
So I would say you don't need a certification to make that move.
Okay.
You can move, and then you can tell your manager that I'm interested in this certification, and you can start studying for it and start getting guidance from other people, join a study group. And we can also, we can put the name of some study groups in the description here.
Sure. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I know a lot of people who don't have any certification and they do work in security. For me personally, I felt that studying for the certification forced me to learn about all domains of security. So I'm not only thinking about one thing here, one thing there. I've gone through every single aspect of security. So it's at the back of my mind. So for me personally, I wanted to do that. And same with the cloud security certification, even though I may not be doing every single thing every week, but I know it's there. And I know that aspect is something I need to remember.
Okay.
So that way, I think it was really useful for me to do those 2 certifications.
What are those, Anjlica? Sorry.
CISSP and CCSP. So CISSP is all of security, and then CCSP is specific about cloud security, and it's vendor agnostic.
So you did both?
Yes. Yes.
So I heard CISSP is one of the toughest, right? Like that's what I heard from people.
Yeah. So again, in my study group, there were people who had been security architects for a long time.
Okay.
And there was one guy who actually forgot he had registered. And then it was too late for him to, when he remembered it, it was too late for him to cancel his exam. So he just went and took it.
Oh, and he passed?
Yeah, because he had been working as a security architect for 10 years. And then he called me, and this guy lives in Philippines. I don't even remember who he is or anything, but he's in my study group, and he knew that I was very actively discussing questions in the group. So he called me and he said, "You've studied enough, go and take the exam." Stop procrastinating.
How much time did it take for you?
So I studied 4 months.
Wow. Okay.
With a lot of time per day. I had started before that as well, but I was not studying seriously. But 4 months, I studied. So I would say, let's say 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. So,
okay.
But it requires a lot of dedication because you're basically giving up your personal life completely.
Right.
If you haven't worked in security for a long time, then there is a lot to cover.
So when you apply for jobs outside, usually they ask the certifications. Right? I think it's good to have sort of a thing.
It is very good to have. It's not mandatory, but they do want to see it. And there might be some roles where they will need it.
Right. Okay.
So it's
Howard,
a very good certification.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right?
No, go ahead, Anjlica.
Yeah, so I was saying that it's a very good certification because then you show that you have actually studied all different domains of security.
Right. I mean, yeah, especially if these certifications are considered to be tougher, right? For example, if you are now everybody is taking cloud certifications, but when you look at the CK or CSSP, they are very tough for very few people who take it. So they still have that value, I guess, right?
Yeah, they have their value, and even for cloud certifications. Again, when I was studying for the AWS one, I felt that I'm not going to use this service and that service and that service, but it really teaches you how to pay attention to what are the limitations of that service, what is the cost of that service. So that piece of knowledge always stays with you. So if you are passionate about security, yes, do CISSP. I highly recommend it. If you want to get into cloud security, you don't need to do CCSP, but I feel that it really helps you see things in a different way, in a very holistic way. So I would recommend that as well. And for that one, because I was already working in cloud security, I studied maybe for 6 weeks. Yeah.
Is there any mandatory certification before that, or anybody can just take CCSP directly?
You don't need CISSP. It helps, but you don't need it.
So is there any associate certification, or it's directly CISSP?
Yeah, it's directly just one.
Okay. So what would you suggest? Do you suggest people to take like specific cloud security certification like Azure or GCP or AWS, or you would suggest them to take this CCSP cloud certification?
I like the vendor agnostic, because in real life, you're never only working with one cloud, and you can always go and
that's a good point.
Read the documentation for that cloud, the security aspects of it. But I think it's better to first learn at a high level for all different vendors, and then you can go and read documents for each vendor. If you have time, you can do security certifications for every vendor, but I think CCSP is more, it gives you more for your time.
Okay. All right, Anjlica, this is a fun question. So which cloud do you think has the best security implementation, or which cloud do you like? It's up to you.
I think you've heard this answer before. It's
Okay.
AWS.
Okay. Same from Jimmy.
because like he said, it is more mature than so we have to remember that the cloud providers built the
Yeah.
cloud not just for Fortune 500 companies who have a lot of tools and
Yeah.
who have specific business cases, or they have to meet certain regulations. It's for everybody. It's for startup
Right.
companies. It's for people who want to, sell their things on Amazon, or
Correct.
for anybody and everybody. So not everything will meet your requirements.
Yeah.
But at the same time, AWS has designed security requirements for all of its enterprise customers as well, keeping them in mind. And it's easy to use. It's easy to automate. I've not worked a lot with Google Cloud and not much really with Azure yet. But I would say as far as the level of, and Oracle Cloud doesn't have as much capability as far as security goes. So I would say in terms of maturity and ease of use, AWS is much ahead of the game.
Okay. So if a person has to prepare for any specific cloud, is it easy for them to, like, let's say, for example, that if their company is working on GCP or Azure, right? And that person would like to get into cloud security, and obviously it would be easier within the company itself to learn Azure, right? Instead of learning AWS.
Yeah.
But having said that, if that person learned Azure, how difficult would that be to get into AWS as a security architect in future?
It's
not,
not.
right? Okay.
I don't think the employers ever look at that unless they need an automation engineer. They want someone to, but even that skill, it can be transferred from one cloud to another.
Yeah.
It's not difficult at all. It's like learning a different language that has a different syntax, maybe.
Right.
If not even that. So it's
and also, yeah, I mean, most of these clouds have similar, actually every cloud has security groups and access control lists or whatever, and they have
may
pretty
not
much
work
similar.
the same way. They may not be exactly the same, but more or less they have the same.
Correct.
It's the same idea. And also cloud providers offer classes to their enterprise customers.
Right.
So meaning if you're interested, you can ask your employer if you can attend, if they will pay for that class. So usually it's like a 3-day class or maybe 5-day class. And I found that one to be very useful. That was offered by AWS.
Yeah, I found one that was, I think, very helpful when I attended one of the Azure class, right? So what they do is they have specific classes, like if you're coming from AWS or GCP, this is for GCP professionals, so that they'll just relate the services and they'll make it very easy. Instead of teaching you from A to Z, they'll just compare the services and say, okay, if you know this is pretty much like this.
Yeah, you can do that too. And then there's Udemy.
Yeah.
There is Cloud Academy.
And there is Cloud Advocate.
Well, the benefit of Udemy is that they also give you the labs.
Right.
So you have short-term labs that you can actually play around.
Right.
So, but the main thing is you have to make some time in your life to play around and learn about these.
Yep. So Anjlica, let's say I want to get into cloud, either it is US or India, but since a lot of companies are going into cloud, do you think there are good job prospects for people who want to become a cloud security engineer or architect?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to get into cloud security. There are a lot of companies who have already gone into the cloud. They're very mature. I guess like you can think about Netflix is very mature in the cloud. But there are a lot of companies, a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are still in their private data centers that have still not gone to the cloud for different reasons. So, and now they're thinking about going to the cloud. And even though they may not take everything, all of their workflows into the cloud, but if you want to get in there and you want to get that experience, there still is a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of companies that still have to go to the cloud. So there is a lot of opportunity.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that there might be a lot of offshore opportunities as well. So that's another way to get for people from other countries to get into, have the option to work for any company anywhere in the world.
Okay. That's great to hear. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Anjlica, for your time. I really appreciate it. And then thank you for answering all the questions patiently. I hope my YouTube family will find this useful. Thanks again. And hopefully we'll do more sessions and maybe based on the questions that people would ask.
It was fun. This gave me an opportunity to recall my past experiences, how I got into security, what I've been doing since then. So this was fun. And yeah, I'm hoping people find this useful. If not, then we can do another session with their specific questions.
Yep. Thank you.